Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. It is Thursday, July 11th. And for those of you who come right on at 6:30, I apologize. I was having just all kinds of things that kind of went kaflooey about it. Well, I won't tell you my sob story. And it's not that sob story of a story. It's just a story of like, oh, I thought I was organized and suddenly it took one thing went off and that was the end of me being organized and ready to start at 6:30. So I apologized for keeping you waiting. So tonight we are going to do something different. We are going to make this new recipe called cold brew cookies. And I have been wanting to make this recipe for weeks, if not months. And it's just been too hot for me to turn my oven on to do this. I have a gas oven, so it really heats up the kitchen a lot and makes it just too hot to turn it on, especially this late in the day. But today's a cooler day and I decided I'm just gonna go for it, especially because I have some cold brew, I have some grounds, I have a good reason to make cookies for my husband, and well, he's gonna be like, there's always a good reason to make cookies for him, but anyway, lots of reasons today. I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. So, we are actually going to use our stand mixer, and if you're not familiar with Pampered Chef's new stand mixer, this came out about a year ago now, and you know, actually it's been a year and a half because I remember so distinctly being in Uganda with Hannah, and she knew it had just come out, and as a family of people who have always had that other brand of stand mixer in our kitchen, even in Uganda, she was kind of like, so Mom, how are you going to manage, like, what do you even think about this? Like, I mean, I've, you know, been a Pampered Chef fan for a long time, and my kids are as well, but you don't mess with the stand mixer. That was the one thing, right, that we really loved, our old stand mixer. And so she really was kind of like, you know, trying to feel me out. I don't know what I just threw in there. Feel me out on how I was going to manage having a competitive stand mixer in the Pampered Chef line. Well, it didn't take me long because all I had to do was start using them side by side. And I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of like everything else Pampered Chef comes out with. We take a really good idea and we make it that much better. And so I'm going to tell you a few things about the stand mixer. So I tried to be more organized before I came on than I was. But I'm pretty sure I'm not 100% there. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a few things as we go along. Suffice it to say, like everything else Pampered Chef comes out with, they took a really great concept and they just leveled it up several notches. And to the point now where when I use the old version, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like, you know, you just kind of get used to things. It's sort of like, do you remember way back, some of you remember this, you remember when your car did not have automatic windows, right? And you had to roll it down, or it didn't have automatic locks and you had to like push them down, right? Some cars still do. Or maybe, I was young, but I do distinctly remember the first television we had that had a remote control. Oh my goodness, right? So it's those kinds of upgrades that this stand mixer has, or that's the best comparison I can think to give you right now as to why this thing is amazing, because it has those kinds of upgrades. Yeah, you know, my old Ford Escort with the push down locks, it drove great. It's a great car. But do I like my automatic locks a lot better? Oh, you better believe it. So I will show you some of those things. So let's get this recipe going. It is kind of a basic chocolate chip style recipe, peanut butter chocolate chip. If you are allergic to peanut butters, you could absolutely substitute almond or just leave the nut butter out and double the actual butter amount. So it's a half a cup of peanut butter, which I'm using my favorite peanut butter half a cup thing, measure all thing to get that out. I meant to do the butter first, so now we're just going to have to weigh it. I buy butter at Costco, and it comes in these much bigger packages. So if I want 8 ounces, of butter. I'm going to have to weigh it out. I want 4 ounces of butter. I'm sorry, and this is 6.5. So I am going to eyeball it because I am that kind of a cook. Even, I mean, I am a little more careful with baking, but it's still, it's just science. We have a really great book that my son-in-law got Ken. Actually, I'm going to just stick this in my butter thing, which is not over there. Okay, try this a different way. Anyway, there's this really great book out there that's basically all about the science of food. Ah, there we go. 4 ounces. Throw that in there. It's called the Food Lab, and it talks about, you know, there's basically 4 elements to cooking, which I'm not going to know what they are off the top of my head, all of them. I know one of them is fat, but it's really interesting. So when it comes to measuring your butter accurately, or using different nut butter, or not using nut butter at all, the butter, the nut butter, they are forms of fat. So you just want to make sure you're doing an equal form or equal amount of another form of fat, okay? For this recipe in particular. All right, so we need a 1/2 cup of sugar and a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar and an egg. So, blah, 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 blah. So here is a sure sign of a well-written recipe. If you are following me on my In the Kitchen with Mary Beth page, and you've noticed I've been posting a lot of recipes. I try to post a new one every day. And the number one reason I'm doing that is because somebody made a comment to me not too long ago that really struck me and stuck with me, and now I'm like, yeah, this is such a big deal. She commented that Pampered Chef recipes don't have ads. And I was like, oh, she's right. Like, you don't have to sift through a whole bunch of ads to get to the recipe. And I was actually got short ribs going in the multi-cooker tonight, and I had to find the recipe I wanted, which is on a different website, not on Pampered Chef, and it was that thing where you just have to kind of, you know, sort through a whole bunch of ads to get to the recipe, and even then the ads still pop up, which drives me a little bonkers. So what does this have to do with brown sugar and the mixer? Actually, it has everything to do with, the other issue is sometimes I'll get to a website, you know, I'll Google, you know, short ribs, that's what I was making tonight, and I'll see a recipe, and I'll go to this person's blog, and I sift through all the ads, and start to put the recipe together, only to realize that it's written in the wrong order. And I've even had that happen with some names you would recognize, recipes. It's written in the wrong order, and I'm telling you, that's not helpful. If the sugar, I should not be talking and measuring things. We need salt, we need vanilla. We don't need that just yet. Okay, sugar. So this is my point. When you are making cookies or any kind of baked good like this, you want to be sure that you're creaming butter with sugar and then adding any other liquid ingredients before you add dry ingredients. That's really important. And I have come across more than one recipe that had the ingredients in the wrong order, and it's confusing to read a recipe and have those ingredients listed incorrectly. Or I've actually had the recipes where they put them into, like they'll have you add the flour and then put the egg in, which is not the way to do it. So that's just a little FYI there on, you know, if you're checking out new recipe websites, make sure the recipes are written. And when you're making cookies or any kind of baked good, you're always going to cream the sugar with the fat. And that's something you would also learn in that book called The Food Lab. The reason for that is because you want to get the sugar integrated into the fat before you add anything else, because sugar actually turns liquid when it gets hot, right? And so you want it integrated really well in that fat before you add your dry ingredients so that when you bake it, it doesn't all fall apart. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to move this out of the way for the moment. We're gonna set this to cream for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Now this is just what they're recommending. It's actually the preset on here. So if you've never used a stand mixer and they frighten you, this is one of those parts of this that you might find really helpful. It's a preset. If the recipe says cream these ingredients, you're gonna put them in the bowl, you're gonna turn the valve to cream, you're gonna press start, and it's gonna do the clicking for you. The other thing I really like about the presets, and in general, is that, can you notice it's starting off slow, and then another few seconds it's gonna pick up the speed. And the idea there is to keep the ingredients from flying out while you're mixing, which is so annoying. Now I have a shield, it comes with a shield, or you can get the shield. And so there's a shield that can go on here. Personally, it gets in my way, but even with the shield on, you can still have stuff fly out. So the whole idea here is to kind of slow the start of the mixing and then have it speed up once the ingredients are starting to be incorporated with each other. Now, I personally feel like when you're beating this part of your cookie recipe, you want to beat it like a lot. Like, I don't want to say to death, that sounds very dramatic, but you really want to beat it well so it's good and fluffy. That makes a difference in the texture in your cookies. So this, like I said, is 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which right now feels like a really long time. Let's see what time is left on here. Oh yeah, I've got a minute and a half yet. So while we're doing that, I'm going to talk to you about cookie scoops, because they come in a whole lot of different sizes, and I find people get confused by that. So these are the 4 cookie scoops that we offer. You can see them all here. Oops, there in front of the camera. So we're going to use this large one here today, and let me talk to you about what I use them for. So this is the baby one, and I should know the measurements. I want to say this is about a tablespoon, maybe a little more. It's on the website, but what I use it for is what's more important. So this is what I would use to make Swedish meatballs. This is what I use to make like little snowball cookies at Christmas time. You could use it to scoop your watermelon. It's the perfect size for filling a mini muffin pan. Perfect size for a little scoop for each of those wells, and it's perfect. So that is the small one. The medium is the one I use most for Toll House cookies. So it's going to make a nice 2.5 inch cookie, and also a really great size for making regular size meatballs. Anything that you're rolling, these are going to save you so much time. My husband, true story, used to borrow mine and take them back to the restaurant when they were making chocolate truffles at Christmas. So he still borrows them every now and again. The large one, which we're going to use today, makes what I call mall-size cookies. And I'm realizing that is becoming an archaic word. So I have to come up with a new way to describe it. And I think I'm going to just call it bakery-size cookies. So, you know, if you go to the bakery, their cookies are usually much bigger than the ones you would make at home. So we're just going to call it bakery size, because nobody goes to the mall anymore, right? I can't even remember. I go to the mall in Rochester for holiday shopping, and sometimes I literally just go because it's kind of part of my holiday routine, the same as, you know, going to see the Christmas parade and, you know, stuff like that. I don't go there to shop really hardly ever. I don't know many people who do anymore. So mall-sized cookies isn't going to mean anything to anyone in another couple years. So we need a half teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of vanilla and our cold brew. So we are going to add salt, egg, vanilla, cold brew, and mix for 45 seconds. So this is the double strength Madagascar bourbon vanilla that Pampered Chef offers. This is actually on sale right now in the outlet. And it is hard to get most of the time. I don't know why we have so much this year, but we do. So my recommendation is if you like good vanilla, this is the best vanilla I've ever tasted. And oh, it's so good. So we really swear by that at our house. And I have a friend who hoards it. It's pretty funny. She won't let her kids use it unless they're making something really important. All right, now it does say to add the salt here, and I would not normally do that. I'm not sure why it has us adding the salt. I'm going to believe that our test kitchens know what they're doing, because I have yet to have anything go wrong based on how they've written it. But that's kind of, I would not have normally done that. Okay, and then we need a 1/4 cup of cold brew coffee. So what is the difference? You're like, okay, what if I don't have cold brew? You can use a regular coffee, but cold brew has a different flavor to it. It is much less acidic. It is much less bitter, even made with the same coffee grounds that you would use to make your brewed coffee, whether it's in a Keurig or whether it's in a drip or something like that. Same coffee grounds, different flavor. It's much milder, and that's what we want here. So we've got a 1/4 cup of the cold brew, and now we're going to set this on mix. So there's different settings. I had it on cream before because we want a cream. Now we're going to mix it. It's a preset for 2:30, but we don't really need it to go that long, so we're going to dial it down. It just says 50 seconds. I think, let me read that. Oh, 45 seconds. There we go. And again, you're going to hear it's going to start slow and then it's going to speed up. Now I'm using the beater, oh, what's it called? Well, it's a flat beater. I think it has a name that I've completely forgotten. But this does come with 2 other beaters. You've got your whisk here. This makes amazing whipped cream in fractions of the time. So if you need a lot of whipped cream, this does the job great. And then it has a dough hook, which I think is in my drawer and I forgot to grab it up. So again, we're just mixing this up to incorporate those ingredients. And now we're going to add our dry ingredients. Okay. This paddle, that's what it's called. The paddle actually has a scraper built into it as well, which is nice because it gets around the edges of the bowl for you and you're not having to go in there and scrape it down all the time. But I still am going to scrape it down because I just am that person. I think it could have mixed a little bit more. So either I put it on wrong or I'm just going to put this on for another minute while we measure our dry. So one of the things too that's really great about the timer that's on here that you can use is that if you get distracted, it doesn't keep going. It doesn't, if you get called out of the room for something, the phone rings, whatever, it'll stop and it doesn't keep going and overmix your whatever you're doing, which can be a real problem, especially with your baked goods. What you really want to be careful about with baked goods is not overmixing. When you overmix it, that's when you end up with really tough cookies and tough bread, even your banana bread, your zucchini bread. If it's overmixed, it just gets tough, and that's what causes it. What happens is you've overstimulated the gluten in your flour, and it gets tough. So with bread, you want to overstimulate that gluten because it does a different thing. It's in a different context of ingredients, but not with your cookies or your cakes. So now we have a 1/4 cup of used coffee grounds. So these are just from our coffee maker. You can use the cold brew grounds if you have made cold brew. I had the cold brew grounds and I don't know where they went to. So these are just from this morning. But we're going to do a 1/4 cup of those coffee grounds. And if you don't know this already, coffee grounds are a really good idea to have in your garden. We have a compost bin, and so those coffee grounds go in our compost bin. All right, so we have that. We need baking powder, soda, flour, and okay, baking powder, baking soda, and flour. So did the salt. And the only sad thing about doing this online, live like this, is you're not going to be able to taste these. Unless you want to come up to my house tomorrow. So we need a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm sorry, 1/4 teaspoon. Baking soda, baking powder, and then our flour. So this is where at my live shows, I would have somebody read me the recipe so I didn't forget anything. Because I am a little notorious for that. I was also thinking I was so smart the other day and telling my husband the difference between baking powder and baking soda, and that baking powder has baking soda in it. And then I Googled it, and apparently I'm not right about that. So anybody knows the difference, you're welcome to share that in the comments. All right, then we need 1 3/4 cup of the flour. I love these measuring cups because it has a 3/4 cup measure, so I don't have to like do mental math. If I was doing like bread or a cake, I would be spooning this in to level it off. You get a much more accurate measure. Because these are cookies, I'm not as worried about that. But again, if you've ever wondered why your recipes come out tough, especially if you're using an old cookbook, and I really need to research this a little better, because the newer cookbooks might account for the fact that you didn't learn how to do that scoop and level in home ec like we all did when I was in middle school. And so just bear that in mind. If it's an old cookbook, you're going to spoon it in and then level it off. All right, so we're going to put this back on mix for 45 seconds. And then we're going to add the chocolate chips and the peanut butter chips here in just a minute. All right, there we go. I'm getting it on my arm. So we need a 1/2 cup of semi-sweet, a 1/2 cup of peanut butter chips. My 1/2 cup thing is dirty, so we're going to use the 2/3 and not quite fill it. What the recipe says is when this gets to 10 seconds left, we're going to stop it and add these ingredients. I am so excited to taste these cookies. They're going to be a nice treat after kind of a crazy day. Oh, I didn't stop quite soon enough. So we're going to do our peanut butter chips. And our chocolate chips. I don't buy peanut butter chips very often, so that was a new thing. I'm going to have to remember to use those up. But my granddaughters are coming for 2 weeks in August, so I have a feeling we'll make these cookies again. If not for them, certainly for Ken and I, because they look so good. So, fun, weird story about me. I never drank coffee until about 8 years ago. I was well into, some would say, on the far end of middle age when I started drinking coffee. But I loved the smell of coffee and I liked the flavor of coffee. And we're going to just start this over. Put it on mix. Turn it all the way down. I don't think I can get it below as 10, but let's see how low we can get. Yeah, 45. We're just going to wash it for 10 seconds. And not overdo it. So I would have been all about these coffee cookies even though I didn't drink coffee. There we go. And now I'm imagining how good these are going to taste with coffee at lunch tomorrow, if there's any left. Can't drink coffee this late at night. It would be a bad, bad plan. but certainly in the morning. All right, so let me get all this out of the way, and we're going to talk about cookie sheets. So first of all, we're going to use the large scoop here. So this is the mega scoop. This is the one for like serving salad. I don't know that I would use it much for baking, but it'll do nice big scoops of like coleslaw and cottage cheese and so any kind of chopped small thing that you're trying to scoop out, okay? I believe this is a 1/2 cup size. This is what I call the mall cookie size, and you're gonna see that here in just a minute. So we are going to put these on. I've got a couple different cookie sheet scenarios set up here for you so you can see how I do it, and then you can decide what works best for you. I don't do a lot of cookie baking in the summer at this point in our lives, but definitely come fall and certainly for the holidays, I am a cookie baking machine. And I'm going to show you how I do that and how I save a lot of time using my pans. All right, so I'm going to actually move this because it would be just like me to knock it off my counter here. And so another thing about this is that it's balanced. So when you go to pick it up, it's not top heavy. And it's just the strangest thing. Now that if I ever have to move my old one at somebody else's house, the old style, it just it catches me off guard because I'm so used to how well balanced this one is. And I do end up moving a lot because where it sits on our counter is not a very good place to actually use it. All right, so we are going to do one batch here. I'm actually going to give this a wipe down. I don't know why. It's clean. It just feels weird to me. And what it's going to tell us to do is 6 cookies on each of these sheets. They are to be ungreased cookie sheets, okay? And I think the thing about these scoops that absolutely was my game changer for me when I first got them all those years ago was that my kids couldn't complain about their cookies being bigger or smaller because they all come out the same size. How smart is that? I just realized I never put my air pie in. Well, okay. We're going to do that right now, and then I'm going to see later if that makes much of a difference in the sound. I was just watching this little mini training thing on how to make good videos and how not to make videos that have bad audio, and I have a feeling had bad audio, so we'll find out. All right, these are going to bake about 18 to 20 minutes. So again, I'm not going to make you wait for that. Whoops. Set my timer here. They come out rather cakey, and I'll post pictures when they're done. But I do want to show you my cookie machine. So I generally bake cookies on the rectangle baking stone. I prefer this over the cookie sheets. Now, that doesn't mean the cookie sheets are bad, just means it's a preference. Baking stones absolutely revolutionized the way I baked cookies. That first year when I started my business, that was what sold me on stoneware, was how none of my cookies burnt, period. I didn't have some, usually what would happen is the ones on the end of the side of your cookie sheet would have dark edges, but the ones in the center weren't done yet. Or you'd go to flip, you put biscuits on a cookie sheet and they look beautiful on top, and you take them out and the bottoms are black. When you bake stoneware, all those problems are solved. And so that's why I prefer to use the stones for baking cookies. But they're heavy and they get really hot, right? And unlike your cookie sheets, which will cool off pretty quickly when they come out of the oven, these stay really hot. So what I do is I actually, once the oven's preheated, I would put this stone in the oven and let it heat for about 5 minutes before starting to actually bake cookies on it. Now, you don't have to do that. Just know that if you don't preheat the stone, you're going to need to add about 5 minutes to the first batch of cookies. Then while this is preheating and I've got my cookie dough made, I get my cookies ready on a piece of parchment paper. And then what I do is I trade pieces of parchment paper on and off this stone in the oven. So I open the stone, or the oven, I'm sorry, I slide out a parchment with baked cookies on it, and then I slide onto the stone a parchment with fresh cookie dough. And I'm going to show you how I do that here on the countertop, and so you can get an idea of how it works in the oven. It saves me so much time, and also what's really awesome is that now when it's time to clean up, all I'm doing is cleaning up parchment paper. I'm literally throwing it away, and my stones are either completely clean or just need a rinse off. I don't have anything baked on them. Okay, so the parchment paper keeps the stones clean, but still allows the stones to breathe, which gives you those perfect cookie edges. And that's why I swear by using my stone. So I'm going to set my stone off to the side for now because, again, we've got cookies in the oven baking. I could have put this in to preheat, and I didn't think to. I don't know why I didn't. So let me show you the rest of the system. So I use these cutting mats, which I use for all kinds of things, as you all know. And I just put a piece of parchment paper on the cutting mat. They are the same size as the baking stone, so it works out beautifully. This parchment you can buy at most grocery stores. I get mine at Costco. I get this big roll this roll's got to be 5 or 6 years old. It is definitely pre-COVID, guys. It lasts forever. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to get 2 more sheets of cookies ready here by putting them on the parchment. And then I will preheat that stone and pop these in the oven by sliding the parchment onto the stone. And I'm going to show you how I do that here on the countertop in just a minute. So let me get another one ready so you can get the idea. I'm like, something is beeping. It's our dinner. It's done. Yay. Too many things that beep in my house anymore. The other day, something was beeping, and none of us could figure out what it was. It was super funny, and then I still don't remember we figured it out, but it was like something we hadn't used in a while, and it was in here beeping, and we're like, what is beeping in our house? So funny. I love the beeps, but yeah, they can be a mystery some days. Okay. This really does work out perfectly. So what is this? 18 cookies. Y'all, I was saying this last week. I still have trouble. If I'm doing a live demo like this and I touch my face, I want to go wash my hands because that was always the way when I did cooking shows. And now I'm like, well, I guess you all don't really care, do you? So I apologize if that grosses anybody out. So I have just a little bit of dough left here. I'm going to just kind of distribute it onto, even with the scoop, some of them get a little shortchanged. So I'm going to put that on there. I want to know which one of you, like me, have just, you have to lick the bowl. Salmonella poisoning. You just don't care, right? I've been told it's way worse than you can imagine, so I probably should be more careful. And these are farm fresh eggs, so probably should really be more careful. All right, so let me show you how this goes when they go in the oven. So we're going to pretend this is our oven rack, okay? And we are going to pretend that these are our baked cookies. So these are done. I open the oven door. Whoops. Something going off my counter. Open the oven door. Okay, open. I'm going to slide these onto another cookie rack, cooling rack, just like so. Okay, I'm going to take my other batch of cookies here. I'm going to slide it right onto the stone while the door is open. So I open the door, I pull the rack out a little bit, so I'm not, you're not going to burn anything. And then I shut the oven door and restart the timer. That's how I just switch between um, pieces of parchment with the cookies on it in the oven. So I just trade pieces of parchment, leave the stone in the oven until the last batch is done. And guys, it's so fast and easy. I can do an entire batch of Toll House cookies, start to finish with the mixer in an hour, using the parchment paper on my stone and just switching those pieces of parchment back and forth. And the really great thing is once these are baked on the parchment, you take them off, you put them on the cooling rack, and you can reuse the parchment for the entire batch of cookies. You don't have to get a new piece for each what do we want to say here, portion that you're putting in. You don't have to use, you can use the same piece of parchment over and over in the oven until you're done baking the whole batch of cookies. So it's super easy, and you could reuse the parchment. I have reused the parchment. Like if I was doing a lot of Christmas cookie baking, doing 3 or 4 different kinds of cookies in one day, as long as I didn't have to worry about any kind of cross-contamination, I would absolutely use the same parchment for, you know, peanut butter cookies as I used for Toll House cookies, as I used for, I don't know, snowball cookies. I would just keep using it until it really just became unusable. But then your cleanup is just wad it up, throw it away, good to go. Rinse off your stone. Your cookies are all perfectly baked. This was the thing that sold me, and I kid you not, sold me on stoneware. It was Christmas. I started my business at Christmas, the year I started, ironically, and when I got my kit, the girl who helped me get started, it had a small stone in it, and she said, try baking your cookies on it and see what you think. So I was like, okay. So I went home and I baked up Christmas cookies, and I was so accustomed to having to separate the cookies. There was the cookies that went in a nice container for when we had company, or if I was taking them to school for something or to a church event or whatever. Those were the good cookies, right? And then there was the ugly tin, the ugly container that we put all the burnt cookies in, right? So you had the burnt cookie tin or container that your family was allowed to eat out of. And then you had the nice cookie container that was the ones you were taking somewhere. And I also remember things like, you know, if I had to take 2 dozen cookies to something at church, I would bake about 5 dozen cookies to get 2 dozen that I would put in the nice container to take to the event. Because, as my son so cutely said when he was about 6 years old, you know, it's really tough when you're married to the chef because people expect you to like bring really good food. You know, you can't just, what he said was, you can't just go buy muffins at the store like the other moms do. Now we all have to buy muffins at the store for this school event, but this was 25 years ago and we could still bring homemade cookies. The point being, that first Christmas, I baked the cookies on the stone, and I remember specifically, it was my little snowball cookies. We call them Russian tea cakes in our family, and those, notoriously, I'd lose 1/3 of the batch to burnt bottoms. By the time the ones in the center of the cookie sheet were set, the ones on the edges had burnt bottoms. So I would just roll them in extra powdered sugar, put them in the family tin, right? And I remember baking that entire batch of snowball cookies, and none of them were burnt. And I was floored. And now I'm just so used to it that like the idea of having burnt edges on cookies is so foreign to me. I don't even think about it. It's been so long. But it's a real problem if you don't have good cookie sheets or if you don't have stoneware. So the cookie sheet that's in the oven is actually an aluminum-based cookie sheet, so that also has much more even heating. Definitely the preference for people who either find stoneware to be too heavy or just don't like stoneware for whatever reason. That's okay. So those actually do a pretty good job of not having burnt edges and burnt bottoms, but I will use stoneware until I just seriously can't handle it anymore. And because it just bakes so evenly. So, all right, well, that was a lot of cookie stuff on a summer night. But I'll post pictures as soon as these are done. One of the tips they give you in the recipe is to sprinkle them with flaky salt or sea salt afterwards. So you've got that kind of caramel coffee thing going on. I don't know. We'll see how that goes, but I will be posting pictures when they're done. So thanks for watching to the end. And also just don't forget that there is a sale going on that ends tomorrow night, July 12th at midnight Central Time. Those prices go away. It's 20 to 25% off a lot of summer favorites. And then when you use the link in my VIP group, you'll get up to 25% more off the sale price. And if you have a past toast discount, you get an additional 10% on top of that. Lots of great deals going on, but those end tomorrow night at midnight. So if there's something in there that you're interested in, make sure you check it out before it's too late. All right, thanks again, and have a great night. Bye-bye.